Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to talk to you about the first time that I ever took Adderall and exactly what it was like. I have here in my journal some jotted down notes so that I can give you a more accurate representation of what happened to me, and with that, let's just get into it. I was in sixth grade with my best friend, let's call him D, and at this time of my life, I was extremely curious about all types of drugs. Basically, anything that I figured could alter my state of consciousness, I was very interested in. And so in sixth grade, that manifested as talking to homeless people and asking them to buy me cigarettes, occasionally stealing alcohol from family locations, and just the basic, sixth grade stuff that maybe people do. And one day it changed for me because I learned that there were pills that could alter how I felt. And so the first pill that I was ever introduced to was through my friend D and his cousin. And so one day, me and Dee were talking, and we were just talking about different things we could get our hands on, how we could have a good time, just something that would make us much less bored than we currently were. And he told me that one of his cousins had something called Adderall. And I knew nothing about Adderall at this time. I basically would have taken any pill that was given to me. So we arranged with his cousin to meet at the local skate park, the one location in every city where you could be guaranteed to find drugs. And at the skate park, we received 3 Adderall pills in a baggie, and I now know that they were Adderall 30 milligram XRs because I know what they look like. We get the pills, and we decide that we're both going to take one each and just see what happens. And so let's just get right into what the experiences were like after these pills digested in both of our bodies. The effects begin with a profound sense of energy and peace. Now, I don't know if you've ever taken Adderall and you're watching this video, but interestingly enough, I haven't felt this much after my first time that I ever took it. But the first time that I ever took these pills, it was a state of peace that I wish I could reach again. I can only imagine it's what people strive for in many religions and things like that. And I'm not sure if it has anything to do with the fact that I was first being exposed to an amphetamine salt, but it has really not ever happened again to the degree that it did. And so the next thing I have on this list is that waves of euphoria begin, and I've never felt so good. And so this feeling is just as if your entire environment, one moment you're walking around town and everything is normal, and the next moment the world is exactly how it should be, and everything in your mind is fine. You could sit down on a park bench, or you could lay down in the middle of the road, or you could go lay down in the middle of a Fred Meyer's, and everything is going to feel fine. Euphoria is something that I think many people chase, and that's why many people get addicted to drugs, and I completely understand why. Because short of words, euphoria is an experience that, when it can be replicated consistently, is extremely potent and addictive. The next major thing I noticed on this experience was that all barriers to action was dropping. And what I mean by that is that when you think about completing a task in your life, you think about anything you might want to do or may want to do in the future, there's a sense of burden placed upon you if you were just going to do that right now. If somebody told you, well, you want to do this to your car, but why aren't you just doing it right now in your free time? You might say, oh, I'm busy, or I'm bored, or I just don't want to do that right now. Now, the first time that I ever took Adderall, I felt as if any task that I wanted to complete, I could do immediately, and I would do it with joy, and I would have a great experience. And so the next thing on my list is this crazy feeling of goodwill towards all beings. And so keep in mind that we're in sixth grade when this happened, but we felt overwhelming love for everyone in the world, and that if everyone could just experience this as we were, that we could all get along as human beings. And it was very powerful and very naive, obviously, but we were walking down the street and we were speaking to random people. Any type of social connection that we could reach was heaven to us. Anytime you interacted with another human, it felt as if it could go back and forth forever, and that you were just this source of energy and socialization, I guess. And so this is a major conflict that comes up next, and where I believe my Adderall addiction began. As these effects were hitting, and my sixth grade brain was essentially exploding, because prior to this I had only gotten minorly drunk and smoked tobacco. And when you take an Adderall for the first time, the contrast could not be larger. And especially if you factor in what I truly believe was my struggle with some form or the pure form of attention deficit hyperactive disorder for most of my life, it was extremely addictive at first experience. And so what I did was I was holding the last Adderall pill we had of the 3, and I just took it immediately. This was probably 10 minutes into experiencing actual effects of the drug. I took it from my friend I guess metaphorically, because he paid for it, and I took it, and I afterwards I was like, yeah, I really shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry, like, and I felt really bad, but it was almost like a compulsion to continue this experience because I realized how precious I found it immediately, and that all I knew about Adderall at that time was that it made me feel that way. I didn't know anything about the half-life or overdosing or anything like that. So I took the second one. And so now you have a sixth grade version of me on 60 milligrams of Adderall XR. And fortunately enough, this experience had put us in such a peaceful frame of mind that he actually immediately forgave me. D immediately was not upset, and he must have been handling it far better because he wasn't feeling this compulsion to continue the experience indefinitely, but I was very powerfully. And so I'm going to get back to my list here. Me and him are feeling extremely social, and also interestingly enough, the same way. We were going back and forth and making conversation about what we're experiencing, how we're feeling inside, and we really were finding basically an exact mirror. And now part of this is because we were best friends, and the other part is definitely because we were on the same drug. But rarely in other drugs do you find such mimicry in the experience, and I mean that even the lows and the highs were perfectly in sync with us, and that might not be the same for everybody based on their physiology, but it was certainly the same for me. And so the next thing we start doing is discussing what the world would be like if this state could be maintained by all other people. And so this is essentially the plot of the movie Limitless at this point. So nothing new you're hearing from me, but at that point in sixth grade, we really were struck by the fact that there were these different states of phenomena that human beings could possess, and that some of them, if they could be maintained, would alter the future of the human race, honestly, if assuming the positive benefits could maintain as well, which is highly doubtful. And so I want to continue down my list here. This is where Irrational Schemes aplenty began. This is where we start talking about, as we're laying back looking at the sky, how we could get this drug, first of all, in mass quantity, not even thinking about regulation or anything like that. And then second of all, how we could just massively ship it to foreign countries or places where aid might be needed. Just completely naive thoughts, just you might consider them like cokehead thoughts. When a cokehead starts talking about all the things they're going to do, we could essentially transfer this state to all of the rest of mankind for all of eternity, because at that moment it really felt as if we were in a divine place and that this was a state of mind that all humans should reach. Another thing I definitely wasn't expecting during my first experience was to have this overwhelming sense of altruism. That really came out of nowhere. Not many drugs that I thought existed in sixth grade make you feel in a way that you want to give your possessions to other people and simply make amends for all that you've ever done. And making amends for all I've ever done is actually the next thing on my list, because when you have that hyperactive Adderall energy, and Drake had gone home at this point and I was back home, you really have nowhere to put your energy towards in sixth grade except inward. And so I just became massively introspective, massively self-analytical, which is very strange for a sixth grader to become like. It was almost like if you've seen the show Yu-Gi-Oh, when he's like a little boy and he has a round face and he's all cute, and then all of a sudden he gets this pyramid in his hand and he becomes a man with sharp angles and he's intelligent and witty. That's how it felt. It really felt as if I had suddenly gotten this strange glimpse of my potentiality and what I could be like. And for me and my psyche that I'm speaking about, that was extremely addictive, because I had been nothing before that but essentially a ball of potential that had failed to manifest even a slight bit of it. All I ever did was dick around and whatever, but I was in sixth grade, so it's excusable. But really I got an intimation of what I could be like if I got my act together, to be honest. And so I became massively self-analytical, and I started reaching out to basically all the people in sixth grade that I could have possibly hurt or bothered or whatever, and got a lot of good responses, got some confused responses as I was up until about 4 a.m. just trying to have some type of social communication or some type of productivity that I could keep moving forward. And so I can tell that I've gotten off track here, but it's worth mentioning that we were still texting back and forth that night and really trying to talk to each other about, could we maintain this state? And our vocabulary in sixth grade called it Zen. I today would not call it Zen, but we kept trying to affirm to each other, like, are we going to be able to maintain this state of Zen? Because this is basically our higher selves and what we could be like. And sure enough, it didn't continue, of course. And I felt it must have lasted longer for me, but I know that I just was dreading the feeling of it going to be wearing off. I was so upset that it was going to go away. And so I think for me, my addiction was rooted in, from the very beginning, how great it felt, and both mentally, and I guess there's not much more than mentally, but I stayed up that entire night in like a type of quasi state of sleep, where I was just listening to, I guess at that time, my Owl City CD, and other of a couple of my CDs that I had, just thinking and thinking and thinking about how I could get some more of this substance. And it's exactly what addict behavior is like. And so, long story short, and I'm probably gonna have to make a second video about what this caused in my life, but the experience ended, and I couldn't find any more of these pills for years, for 2 years afterwards. And so ultimately in 8th grade, I ended up deliberately manipulating my doctor into writing me a prescription. And so I think that's content for another video. And thanks for sticking around and hearing what my first experience was like. Subscribe if you like this video, and let me know in the comments if you can relate to any of these experiences. Thanks.